A common question that I am regularly asked is, what can I expect on this test? What's it going to be like? What are the questions like? You see, at the end of this video, I'm going to give you 3 tips, things that have helped me work through and process the questions that I encounter on the Magento certifications. But before we do, I want to throw this out there. If you have questions about Magento tests, preparing for them, certifications, any of that stuff, please feel free to drop that in the comments below. I'm trying to put out information as far as what can you expect, how to effectively approach these tests. So I'd appreciate that if you do have questions that come to mind. All right, so if you have never taken a Magento test before, you're in for a surprise. Unfortunately, this is not one of the better surprises. You see, because the questions on this test is, in my understanding, pretty well cutting edge. You see, these questions are what's called scenario-based. You're presented with a scenario, some requirements, maybe a merchant is having some problems, maybe this code is broken, or here's something that you need to build, or some action you need to take. And you're just presented with a question after this scenario. If based off of this information, based off of this problem, what do you need to do to fix it? And then you have 4 to 5 answers. You see, on the surface, this might seem fairly easily. Wow, they're giving me information and knowledge. In reality, my experience is this is actually very difficult. In fact, I've seen more people fail on the scenario-based questions than previously did before this style of test came into circulation at Magento. You see, and here's the reason. It might be easy to memorize answers, questions, information, but in reality, this test is all about problem solving. Given this information, how do I solve this problem? I think it would be helpful, though, to look at a question like, what does this involve? How do I actually do this? All right, so here's the question. Follow along, read it as well. Then, hey, if you want to answer it, feel free to do so. A merchant operates one Magento installation that ships to residents in both the United States and Europe. To reduce conversion fees, they wish to charge credit cards in the payer's currency, US dollars or euros. What steps must be taken to accomplish this? We have 4 answers here. So here are these 3 tips that will help us process this question and hopefully choose the correct answers. Obviously, I'm not focused on what is the correct answer here because there is going to be a lot of questions and we probably couldn't create videos to cover everything. And keep in mind, this is a sample question. So let's look at these 3 tips. Number 1, notice the information that you are given. And I know this sounds elementary, but as I worked with people, talked about practice test questions, etc., you wouldn't believe how often those little details are missed. So, in other words, this tip is resolve before you take the test that you are going to focus on every word of every question. That's number 1. Here's number 2. Group the answers and then eliminate them. You see, many times the answers in questions are similar to each other. This one is no exception. View them as groups. So we see here in this particular question, 1 and 3 sound fairly similar and 2 and 4 sound similar. So we are expected in this case, and this is probably one of the more difficult cases where we have 2 out of 4 that are correct answers. But in this case, we now have 2 groups of questions. Now, in a 1 out of 4 style question, which is the majority of the Magento certifications, we can take those groups and we can look at and see which one is emphatically wrong, and we eliminate that group with that group of 2 questions. Now we're left with 2 questions that might be a little more close. 1 out of those questions is correct, and now we have a 50-50 chance. So we just dramatically increase the odds of us getting this question correct. But in this case, we have 2 groups of questions still. We have on our group for questions 1 and 3 would be, is it a website store or store view, or just a store view? Or the second group, is it the base currency, or do we use the allowed currencies? So now you are solely relying on your Magento knowledge as you deconstruct this question. And that's number 2. Group the answers and eliminate them. And then finally, the last one here. Even if you don't know an answer, pick one. Just pick one. or actually B2 in this case, you still have about a 25% chance of getting it right. That's number 3. Pick an answer always. We're going to talk about more tips, more suggestions, because I have a ton of them, literally a whole presentation on how to pass a Magento certification. So stay tuned for more. If you liked it, again, please remember to click that like button. It's really helpful for me to know what information is especially helpful to you. See ya. Talk to you next time.